let's talk for a minute about Pynchon. Nobody's ever dared to make one of his novels into a movie. Was it hard? Did you have to get his permission? How did that come about?
We contacted his representation.
Yes. You'd heard that he was possibly open to an adaptation of Inherent Vice. And so I contacted his agent, and they said yes, that he was. And I said that Paul was interested, and we found out that he was also an admirer of Paul's work. So there was that. And they sent over like galley copies for Paul and myself to read. And after that, basically, I just went ahead and made the deal over a few years. It took a few
So these were galley copies. So you saw it before it was published?
Yes.
Yeah. Just about a month or so.
Yeah, it wasn't very long. Yeah.
Right. And then how
That
did
was
you?
before the master. Yeah.
Yeah. And then how did you start? You'd never really done a true adaptation before. I mean, There Will Be Blood. You took just the beginning of the Upton Sinclair novel and then went off in your own direction. This one is very faithful to the book. And
yeah, I did it the old-fashioned way, where I just got a cookbook holder and I laid out the book, and I brought all those typing skills that my mom paid for, back when I was a kid, and I just typed out the dialogue so that I could see it as a script. And as I was going, things were presenting themselves kind of obviously as things that could be cut, or I thought some things were less obvious, and it was really just about getting it out of being a book and into the form of a script, just so I could look at it in a format that I understood more than anything, just to see what. And I suppose there could have been an easier way. I should have called the publisher and gotten a PDF file, cut and paste. But the hard way seemed good, to just keep working with the material to get to know it. It came along at the right time for me. I mean, I was sort of sick of the sound of my own voice, and I'd always loved Pynchon, and I'd thought about trying other books that he'd written. And so to have this opportunity and to work with this material was kind of like, working with a collaborator, where normally I'd worked alone in my room, and you just sort of struggle through. So I hate the word masterclass, but it feels like it fits, that I could just sit with his words and look at how he turned words around and put things together. It was like a shot in the arm for me, to be excited about writing again, be excited about this great job that I'm able to do, and I have, and somehow I was just not that high on it. But by the end of doing this, I feel like I learned a lot doing this. So I was never closed to it, but I loved writing, and I had ideas coming out of me that I could get down. But this one just came along at the right time. It made me excited, made me feel lucky to be a writer. I was certainly lucky to work with this book, or his words.
And at what point did you conceive of the idea of making Sortilege the narrator? Because she isn't the narrator in the novel.
Right. She's a supporting character in the book who lives down at the beach and is really into astrology and seems to say beautiful things, little pieces of advice here and there. And somewhere after messing with it for about a year, it seemed that the story needed something else. It needed a way to bring some of the things that Pynchon's verse into the script, and also just as a helper to the audience to kind of help guide us through this kind of elaborate, crazy maze.
Yeah. Right.
And the other thing was, I think hand in hand with the idea of having Joanna Newsom, who's a terrific singer and harpist, play the part, so that kind of made it fuller.
You kind of wrote it for her voice?
Started out being nothing, and then halfway through I started to think, boy, there's only one person that could play this kind of Jiminy Cricket surfer girl character, and it was her. So.
Huh. And when you were reading the book and thinking about the movie, I mean, were the images in your mind at all the images that we now see up on screen?
Well, no, they never are. There's just a vast distance between the things you usually see in your head and how they turn out. There were obviously photographs from the period, and yeah, there were other films and stuff, but The Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers was a great comic book that's referenced in the book. That was a great thing, because essentially that's just like small little panels, square panels, and these just dirty, filthy hippies just trying to score dope, you know, and this stuff is so funny, and the LAPD is it's not just the LAPD, it's just the cops, the fuzz is usually involved in there, so everything's kind of like that. But somewhere along, you know, that's one thing, but the distance between those ideas and really getting there and doing it is usually kind of large, so it seems hard to remember even some of the original ideas I might have had in my head by now.
Yeah, yeah. And did things, this is sort of for you and for Leslie, did things change much in the editing room? Were there significant temporal shifts or?
I wouldn't say significant.
Yeah.
But I would say that we were editing and rewriting a lot as we were going along. So
The
that
voiceover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that by the time we so much more than we normally do. Leslie was actually on set a lot, particularly in the last 2 weeks when it was clear we were going to finish shooting and we were trying to get all the pieces of the puzzle that we might need. So that by the time we got there to the editing room, we were working with what we knew we had, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the voiceover just provided so much flexibility.
And you could
Just
go,
for tone and
you could rewrite that
rhythm
at
yeah.
any point
It could
when you,
be
as needed.
more expository, it could be more lyrical, and had to choose which direction we went with the voiceover. So that, you know, that really.
I think we were always scared about too much voiceover. It was just sort of like, when's too much, you know? So long discussions about what's the right amount.
Yeah.
And Mark, when you approach this, I mean, one of the things that I love about the movie is that it doesn't really visually indulge in the usual 60s, 70s stereotypes. There's no psychedelic sequences. There's no, you know, nobody's with tambourines and bell bottoms, and you know, you managed to. I mean, the costumes are very distinctive. Dr. Blatnoid's velvet suit stands out. How did you? Were you very conscious of trying to avoid certain cliches of the period movies?
Yeah, I read the book and took what I could from Pynchon's descriptions, and then some of them aren't described, and we decided what piece would fit in the puzzle with them. And I think I made a couple of different colored suits for Blatnoid. Pynchon describes it as ultraviolet, you know, and then we did the more livable plum. And, you know, Paul's really conscious of not overdoing it as far, and that's in turn makes me sort of pull back, and you know, we don't want to distract from a scene with a costume, you know, and so I'm very happy with sort of the laid back way that it comes out, because you get it, but it's not knocking you over the head, and it feels period, but it's also interesting to look at, and it's storytelling and character.
You can do something that's entirely accurate to the period. I mean, just ripped straight from a photograph that you've seen somebody wearing, and then you're standing on set and thinking, this is absolutely preposterous. You know, you can't do this because, you know, it gets in the way of the thing that you should be looking at, which is the actors or the story. It just becomes a costume performance.
Right.
It's like, that is keeping an eye on that.
So over the years of working together, I know the drill. Like we want it to be there, but we don't want it to take over in any way. It's like 3, 4, 5 layers down.
Right.
Was that all American Family that actually brings the dope? Is that in Pynchon, or is
absolutely.
Is that the way it's described?
He describes it. He describes the All-American Family. The one description that I remember best is of the daughter who has a future in drug abuse. Right. Yeah.